How are you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
Not too bad. I did a quick Google of your accolades here. We'll see how accurate it is. You hold several records: the Tahoe 200, the Mogollon Monster 100, and Red Rock Canyon 100 kilometer. You're 6 minutes off at the Bigfoot 200. No big deal. 45 hours. But you also used to be a competitive swimmer at the collegiate level as well.
Yeah. To correct a couple of those, I don't
Yeah,
have the course record at the. It's pronounced Mogollon. It looks like Mogollon.
Mogollon.
Yeah. Who knows why? But yeah, at the Mogollon Monster, I don't have the course record. It was an alternate course, so it's only been run once, so I don't really count that as anything. And then for Bigfoot, the only time that's faster than mine was a series of out and backs they did last year that had a lot of pavement and less miles, less elevation gain. And then my course was also a little bit modified from the original course, so it's kind of a standalone as well. But I do think like one of the top Bigfoot performances is a reasonable thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, no slouch regardless. So, how old of a guy are you?
I'm 30.
30, and you started running first, or like I said, you had a swimming background when you first got into sports, or where does this all stem from?
Yeah, so swimming at started the earliest. I mean, I was in swim lessons from the earliest possible time, like 2 to 4, and showed some level of aptitude there, and then was in kind of various sports until about 8, and then that's when I really started to focus on swimming, and was a competitive swimmer all the way through college. So basically from the ages of 8 to 22, and then once I was done swimming, I still had the appetite of a collegiate athlete, and so I sort of needed. I realized very quickly I was like, I need to do something intense exercise-wise, or I'm gonna become an unhealthy person really quickly. So started
Yeah.
running, signed up for a marathon, signed up for a 50, and then signed up for a 100, kind of all within a 6 month period. And yeah, then the addiction quickly set in, and here we are now, focusing on 200s.
So you weren't a big runner before that then. Your swimming was your main focus,
Yeah.
and you did that at obviously a high level,
Yeah,
which
there's
is
actually a pretty funny picture of me doing my first ever 5K, which we did every year as a collegiate swim team, just looking totally miserable. And yeah, I did not like running until it's like turned from something that was just suffering into essentially just like the obsession of my entire life. So I don't really know how that happened.
yeah. I'm currently trying to work on my 5K. So I'm new to running. 10 kilometers is the furthest I've ever run in my entire life, and I
Nice.
hated myself for 3 days after. But
Yeah.
the 5K is nice for me with the time I have and being. I hate running, but you definitely understand the challenge, and you're always looking at your times and okay, can I run faster next time? And yeah, I can see there can be a definite bug there that catches you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, I felt the same way you did when I was a swimmer, and I remember running a 10K in college and being like, "Whoa, like this is crazy." Did 10K in a
Yeah,
day, it feels good, and it does. It's like anytime you're improving and either getting faster or running further, it's always good things. And honestly, like anything a half marathon or below is probably smarter than what I'm doing in a lot of ways.
yeah,
But yeah, the runner's high is a real thing.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, you guys are dealing with insane amounts of elevation change. I can't remember the spec from Bigfoot 200, but was it over 40,000 feet of elevation change to
Yeah, the
that run?
official course is 201 miles or thereabouts, with 44,000 feet of elevation gain and 45,000 feet of descending, something like that.
And you call Colorado home,
Yeah.
correct? So you deal with elevation probably on every run.
Yeah, so I live in the western side of Colorado, which is a lot of desert. So that's like my home trails that are close to my house are mostly in the desert. And I mean, it's not mountainous, so there's not, 5 mile, 5,000 foot climbs, but I'm an hour and a half from Ouray, which is in the San Juan Mountains. And the Ouray 100
Yeah.
is probably the hardest on trail 100 in North America, potentially the world. But that's where I do a lot of my training for these mountainous races, and training at both at high elevation. So all my races start around, or all my training runs start around 8,000 feet, and I easily get up above 12, 13. And then pretty much everywhere I go, I'm going down in elevation. So like for Bigfoot, the highest point of the race was a peak that was 5,800 feet. And so living and training in Colorado is kind of a cheat code in that way, because you just go down and you feel like you have tons of oxygen.
Well, 12,000 feet. A lot of people, I live at 2,000 feet. Go to 12,000 feet, you can start to feel lightheaded if your body's not used to that elevation. So you just got, like you say, a cheat code because you're used to dealing with high elevation. Yeah, how do you support yourself through the run? I mean, diet, nutrition. What does training look like for you? How are you not? Well, you probably are. Your knees are probably going to blow out at some point, but whatever. We'll slap new ones in there and keep running. But like, how do you look after yourself? Not overtrain, not beat yourself up, because you're running every day, I imagine, and it's hard. Recovery is important, and then you face these monster runs, and you got to be in the best shape of your life every time. How do you prepare and maintain through that process?
Yeah, so a lot there. I'll kind of go step by step to address the knees. Though the nice thing about ultra running is that there's actually a long career involved here. I mean, there's 50-year-olds, 55-year-olds winning really high profile races. And so you can be at the top of your game for 20 to 25 years without showing too much wear and tear, as long as you're taking care of yourself. And so putting an emphasis on durability, you're right that the pitfall of endurance sports is overuse injuries. It's really easy to get some strains and things like that. There's not often super acute problems that occur unless you take a fall, because you're just not putting the force on your body that like a football player or a soccer player doing hard cuts or smashing into one another. Like, that's not happening. But the overuse stuff is definitely the common injuries in these types of sports. And so I put a heavy emphasis on strength training. So in addition to running, my peak weeks, I might spend 24 hours of time on feet. So like actually out running or hiking, depending on kind of what the terrain looks like. And then I'll spend another 6 hours typically in the gym. And so I actually lift fairly heavy, like for an endurance athlete. I focus on some squats, some deadlifts, a lot of single leg weighted exercises, a good mobility routine as well. And so kind of keeping everything loose, keeping the range of motion where it needs to be for all of the movements that I need to do. And then making sure, all those little stability muscles that hold your knees in place, keep your ankles tight, all of those things need to be addressed. And so over the years, little issues crop up here and then. And I've got a PT who's also an ultra runner, so she knows exactly kind of what to look for. And so we've developed a strength training program over the course of a couple years that just addresses, most of my particular deficiencies that I tend to have, and then also attempting to kind of prophylactically address other common issues that crop up with other runners. So you can kind of think of the strength training as both increasing muscular endurance, so helping how you're going to feel at the end of one of these races, but also that's the side of the training that I really feel like focuses on durability rather than the running side of training, which is the building speed, endurance, and those types of kind of bread and butter factors that and go into a 200-mile race or a 100-mile race.
Yeah. How tall of a guy are you?
I'm 5'9".
5'9", so you don't have a monster stride by any means. You're definitely, some of those guys that are 6+ and very slender. I mean, you watch that Olympic running, and those guys just carry stride and carry pace. So
yeah, and
what's your typical? Yeah,
I have a little bit of an atypical body type for a runner, where a lot of the really fast guys, like you're saying, kind of look similar. A little taller. And they don't even necessarily have to be taller, but very lean with long legs. And I'm much thicker, so I'm like 5'9", 175. And so definitely more compact, but and a little carrying a little more muscle around. But I mean, I don't have a lot of body fat to lose, and I feel like people can kind of get caught up in the I need to be a certain race weight conversation, and that can both be like mentally unhealthy. And then I mean, I actually was heavier than I've ever been going into my races this year, and I felt better, I think. So there's a balance, like an optimal balance for each person,
Yeah, overall health trumps probably everything, and
yeah,
being at your the body weight your body wants to be, and like you said, your strength training, so that is probably a great thing for your overall fitness. So diet, nutrition, you live and breathe it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Or surprisingly not so strict, or what does your life look like there?
No, it's very strict. So I a while back, after about 3 years of ultra running, I was dealing with chronic inflammation problems, and so I went on a pretty strict ketogenic diet. So like almost no carbohydrates for maybe about a year, and just let everything kind of calm down. I noticed an immediate decrease in just the inflammation, and an increased ability in my body's propensity to burn fat for energy, which is obviously really helpful for these longer races because you can only stomach a certain amount of carbohydrates. But even lean people are carrying around 12,000 to 15,000 calories of body fat that your metabolism can choose to use for fuel. And so I was keto for a long time and was very strict about that. And then over the past few years, I've kind of adapted that to be more optimized for running. And so now I sort of periodize my diet around intense training. So, today I ran this morning, and then I've got a lift in the afternoon scheduled. And so I did my run fasted because it was an easy run. But then I got home and ate some fruit, and that's typically where I get a lot of my carbs. And then for my lifts, I will typically take in more carbohydrates than some days where I'm just doing an easy run. But for days where I'm just doing, an easy recovery run, my carbohydrate intake will typically be like less than 30 grams a day. And instead, I'll focus on protein and fat. And then protein is the only metric. I don't actually track it anymore just because I know what I need to eat. But I was tracking protein for a long time, and I was just making sure I got a gram per pound of body weight a day. So about 175 grams a day. And I feel like typically I get anywhere between 175 and 225, kind of depending on what I did that day, how hungry I am, those sorts of things. And then for long runs, I fuel as if I'm going to on race day. So I'm fueling with mostly gels, running types of foods. And so I'm aiming for about 90 grams of carbs an hour for my long runs and those kind of intense training sessions that are, between 6 and 8 hours long. And so obviously those days look really different to my recovery days from a diet perspective, but I feel like I've gotten kind of what I'm following the nomenclature for it is optimized fat metabolism, so OFM. So being able to burn both carbohydrates and fat, but if you have stomach problems in a race, it's really helpful to have your body pretty well trained to burn fat so that if you can't eat, then you're not going to bonk and just like totally run out of energy as if you were, or like it if you were only reliant on carbohydrates. So kind of a mix of approaches there, but I avoid high inflammatory foods. I've been gluten-free for a while now, and I wasn't gluten intolerant growing up as a kid, but I haven't had it for so long that now it's just like the last time I had gluten, it was like I'd been poisoned, like my fingers swelled up, my feet swelled up, my joints ached, I had brain fog. So gluten-free now, and like when I have, carbohydrates, it's typically either gels, fruit, or rice or potatoes. So kind of limited sources there. And then I keep my diet really clean. I don't really eat anything that's processed, focusing mostly on whole foods and just, sources of protein and fat. I eat a lot of ground beef, burgers, steak, that sort of thing.
So yeah, not super picky, like lean ground beef, lean steak. You're not getting the huge marbled cuts. You try to keep it pretty clean on that side of things too.
See,
Lots of
that's
eggs.
where my opinion is probably somewhat unconventional in regard, like as opposed to like what the government guidelines for health would say. Like I don't think that animal fat is bad for you, so I actually go for typically pretty fatty ground beef, so like 85-15, and then my favorite cuts are ribeyes. So the fat for me is fuel, like I was talking about, being having your body kind of choose that first when you're at a low intensity effort while you're running. And then obviously the protein is just, rebuilding the muscles and keeping them strong. But yeah, I don't think of the animal fat as a bad thing. I eat lots of fattier red meat, and hamburgers is kind of my go-to, and then plenty of eggs,
Yeah.
and lots of cheese. So yeah, I'm not too
Yeah.
concerned necessarily about the specific source, as long as it's my goal is to have as few ingredients as possible, essentially. So like I'm not buying frozen foods, I'm not eating a lot of preservatives. I typically don't eat cheese like out of a bag, so it doesn't have those caking agents and things like that. So that's kind of what I mean by clean, as opposed to avoiding the fat.
Well, you're not. Doesn't sound like you're hating your life with your diet. Like that's you know, it's almost a caveman diet.
Yeah.
Do you stay away from leafy greens?
I don't stay away from them necessarily. I will say, like, my favorite vegetable is Brussels sprouts, but unfortunately, they
Yeah.
give me like some unfortunate stomach problems. Typically, the
Yeah.
next morning, I'm not too happy after I drink my coffee. But no,
Yeah.
I like one of my favorite meals is just burgers with kind of a cream spinach Alfredo sauce on top of the burger. So I like spinach, like broccoli. Happy to eat a salad. So no, it's not that I stay away from leafy greens. They do. How much of my diet do they make up? A small percentage of overall calories. But
Yeah.
no, I think like it's roughly a paleo diet, but if you added in like running foods and
Yeah.
um, dairy to that, that's kind of what I think of. But again, it's just like keeping the ingredients to a minimum, so not using not having the preservatives, those types of things.
Yeah. So how far was it easier on you cranked out this morning?
9 miles.
Oh, well, we can compare to 200. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when to this week, I'm just kind of like getting back into training, so it'll probably be a 50 to 60 mile week. But I mean, when you compare it to, you know, I don't know, I'll spend maybe 12 hours of time on feet, and you compare that to the peak weeks of 24 hours of time on feet,
Yeah.
it feels pretty easy
Well,
comparatively.
no kidding.
It's all relative, but it's like this is almost a full time job for me in terms of the amount of time that I spend doing it. So whenever I spend less than if I spend less than 2 hours a day on feet, I think of it as like typically pretty easy.
Yeah, you probably start to feel like a slob, hey?
Yeah,
I only ran for 2 hours today. I'm such a pig.
I mean, I will say that like an hour long run still feels like a workout to me. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's the nice thing about running is that I think that's true for almost anybody. Whereas like with biking, you can kind of go for an hour long bike ride and not really have that much happening with your body. So uh, I still feel like an hour is a real run, but yeah, I mean it's all relative. Being in the ultra running world totally twists your mind about what kind of a normal distance is. Because I'm doing 6 hour, 7 hour runs every week typically during training, and those can be anywhere between 20 to 35 miles. So it's like when that's
Yeah.
when that's a normal day of a week, it's your perspective is pretty skewed.
Yeah. So you're walking during these long ones too. You are taking rest walks and filling up on food, or what's your process throughout the run look like there?
Depends on what the terrain looks like. So in the mountains, I am typically for longer races. 100 it can be different, but for a 200, if it's steep and it's a 5 mile descent, I'm gonna hike the whole thing. But that's actually what I'm best at is hiking quickly. So up something relatively steep, I can hike 16-minute miles fairly steadily and for a long time. So there's a lot of hiking involved. It's certainly not slow, uh, traditionally speaking. And then for longer runs in the desert that are flatter, so if you have a 26-mile run that's got 10,000 feet of climbing, that's obviously going to look really different than a 26-mile run with 2,000 feet of climbing. And so for
Mm-hmm.
some of those long runs in the desert, it'll be running the whole time. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can train to eat while running, and that's the nice thing about the gels. And the companies whose gels I use is called Precision, and they're really easy to swallow and don't have too much flavor. And so you can kind of just slurp those down with some water. And then there's all these different drink mixes that can get you some liquid calories as well. So eating while you're running is pretty easy
Mm-hmm.
once you kind of get the hang of it. So yeah, it's like in the mountains, lots of hiking. In the desert or flatter places, typically much more running in terms of the ratio, like of what you're actually spending time doing.
So prior to a race, are you going out there surveying where you're going to run, setting a time goal for yourself, and then having a pace throughout the race through a certain section of the paces you want to hit during that maybe type of terrain, climbing, descending, or are you just going as hard as you can with the mindset that you just want to get to the end?
So I typically don't do tons of course recon. For like Bigfoot this year, the most recent race I did, I had run that race before, so I knew what a lot of the course looked like. But I'm just going to train on places close to me that are pretty similar and actually like a little bit harder in terms of terrain. So that was a benefit. But there's a lot of runners who make pace charts and they'll be like, I want to be at this aid station at this time. I want to be going this speed for this section. But I don't do that. I don't like to have specific numbers in my mind necessarily. Like I'll typically have a goal time going into a race. Like for Bigfoot, I was thinking my goal time was 48 hours. For my last race this year, the Moab 240, I'm thinking 55 hours. So I typically go in with a goal time, but I'm not thinking about that very much during the race. I think that kind of thinking about the outcome as opposed to the process for me has a negative effect on the way that I'm going to feel, you know? Like I do these things because I love the outdoors and I love running. So I want to focus on having fun, especially in the first chunk of the race where I actually feel good. And so typically I'm going mostly based on feel. I will regulate my output for the 200s by breathing through my nose. So, if I have to start breathing through my mouth, then typically I'll walk because I'll be, going up a steep climb or something. And so that's kind of how I regulate how much I'm putting into things or how much effort I'm putting in for probably the first 100 miles or so. And then after that, I mean, I I feel like in these multi-day events, it's really kind of silly to think about racing until you're at about 100 miles. There's reasons that could change, but typically it's not till about halfway through the race, a day or so into it, where I'm thinking about, okay, like this is the time to race. And that's when I kind of stop regulating my effort so much and I'm kind of pushing a lot of the time. But especially for the first half of it, it's like breathing through my nose, trying to have fun, keeping my heart rate really low. And so then I can have a bit more in the tank to be able to push if I need to later in the race.
In and out through your nose
Yeah, typically.
for 100 miles.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be
I was
exceptions
gonna
to
say.
that, but
Yeah,
that's
obviously.
it's like if when I'm doing these races, I want my heart rate to be like low zone one, so like as easy as possible for the first half, and so my heart rate will typically be between like 120 and 130, which is where I can pretty comfortably breathe through my nose.
And what kind of pace are you holding there? If you're just running on typical terrain, what's your pace at that?
I mean, if it's flat, probably like nines, 930s, depending on how technical it is, and
Yeah.
same if it's downhill, maybe 830s to nines, and then going uphill anywhere between
Yeah.
15 to 18, depending on how steep we're talking about.
Yeah, so you're not coming out of the gate trying to crank pace up and just blast through it. You're long game from the get go there.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to try that breathing through the nose for my 5K and see if I don't die. I just feel like I can't do it.
yeah. I mean, you have to have a certain level of fitness where your heart rate is low enough to be able to do it for sure. But there's a lot of benefits to breathing through your nose. I mean, your nose actually filters out debris, so if it's a dusty area, you're going to be getting less dust in your lungs. It also warms up the air more. So if it's cold, you're not going to be getting that kind of lung burn that you can feel when it's cold. There's a good book called Breath that talks about all the benefits of nose breathing and kind of based on some deep sea divers and those types of things, like extreme breath holding type events. So yeah, you can get a lot of benefit from it, but your heart rate pretty much has to be an easily conversational pace for you to be able to do it. But it is a really good pace regulator because it's just something that I don't even have to think about. Like I don't have to look down at my watch. I don't have to pay attention to actually how fast I'm going. I can just go completely by feel based on this one signal.
Mm-hmm. So obviously the physical evolution is you've just been grinding at it and pushing it harder and harder and dialing in your training and dialing in your diet to what works for you. How has your mental evolution changed since you started? Obviously, I mean, everybody who's ran wants to quit, wants to stop. You have to fight that. You have to beat that out of your head. What has that been like for you? Have you had that in your head and you still deal with it?
So yes, in the sense that there is a time in every single race I've ever done, kind of no matter the length, where I'm like, what am I doing here? Like what? Well, why am I doing this? I chose to do this. I paid to do this. Like, why? I could be doing literally anything else. But that being said, the option to quit never really comes into my brain unless something serious has gone really wrong. Like I had a couple DNFs last year. Did not finish, and those are all physical problems, like a hamstring strain, breathing issues that were going to get severe. So, you have to make smart decisions when things go wrong. But the mental aspect, I mean, so when I was a kid, I always had this kind of weird drive to keep going. So I mentioned, I was in swim lessons when I was 2 or 3, and when I was 3, notice some of the older kids, you get these patches for how far you swam, and I got a 200-meter patch or something like that. But the older kids had 1,000-meter patches, and so I decided that I wanted a 1,000-meter patch, and I was a 3-year-old, and I swam for 2 hours to get this 1,000-meter patch, and like, why? Who knows? My 3-year-old brain's like, I'm gonna do this, and then I swam. It took 2 hours, but I actually ended up getting the 1,500-meter one too. So swam a 1,500 when I was 3. So that's kind of cool. So I had that just innately from when I was born. Who knows why? Just genetics, luck. But and then my parents, we were a really active family. So the summer I turned 7, we were always into bicycle camping, and so we had bicycled around the island of Ireland. I grew up in England, so we were in the UK. I bicycled around Scotland, but then our biggest trip was the summer I turned 7. We bicycled from Fort Collins, Colorado, to Seattle, Washington. So basically across the entire western United States. It took 46 days, and we're camping every now and then. We're staying in hotels and that sort of thing. But and I don't think my parents were necessarily like, hey, we need to create really good endurance athletes. But in my head, like, I draw a direct line from those types of experiences to my ability to push forward and deal with the suffering involved in these things. And then swimming through college, like, swimming is one of the hardest sports in the world to train for because it's so low impact. You can actually just do it for so long. I mean, in college we were spending like 30 hours a week in the pool. So the discipline from swimming has transferred really well over to running. And so kind of my whole life has been oriented around physical exercise as far as like what was providing the structure in life. And so having that framework, it was sort of just like, okay, now instead of swimming, I'm just plugging running into the the schedule for my life that I already have from swimming. So like that side of it's pretty easy. And then yeah, I don't know, just the during races, the desire to quit, it's like never an option. It's just not something that I consider unless there's acute issues. So that I think is partly just luck. It's like I've got the brain that doesn't bring those thoughts to the forefront.
Yeah, and I mean you've got the sense of familiarity. I mean you've been to the point of running, pushing yourself super hard before, and you haven't quit in those instances. So why would you quit this time? I mean, familiarity, as you run more, when the suck starts to come in and you're like, been here before, got to the end before, just gonna get it done. I know I can get it done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, experience.
yeah, that's definitely important.
Experience is a huge benefit in these long races, just because you do know how to deal with, your brain is typically going to have a pattern of protest that is predictable, and so you do know how to deal with those kinds of thoughts, and then also just the incremental little issues that crop up once you've dealt with several of them before. Like you've got the literal toolkit in some cases to deal with them again.
And you're into coaching now as well?
Yeah, so this year I quit both of my other jobs that I had. The past few years, I've just been doing kind of things that allowed flexibility for me to be able to train, but now I'm a full-time remote ultra running coach, which is it's pretty cool. Not a job title that I would have anticipated myself having when I was in college and in high school.
So obviously, I'm assuming you found that through coaching's probably benefited your training for yourself as well. A lot of people say teaching is a great tool for learning too. So how's that experience been for you?
Yeah, I think that's a cliche in life that is absolutely true, and I'm sure it's true with parents and kids. I'm sure it's true with teachers and students and coaches of all kinds. I feel like the thing I like most about coaching and the thing I like most about ultra running is that you're playing with this puzzle for everybody. And I described it to an athlete I'm working with the other day. I was like, ultra running is basically just high level problem solving with potentially problematic physical consequences. So
Yeah.
like, and it sort of is true, and then you get to, so if you picture 100 as a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, then the 200 is a 5,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and so it's fun to be able to try to put all the pieces together, and then each individual you work with has a different life situation in terms of stress and how much time they have to train, and so trying to fit effective quality training around someone who's only got 8 hours or 10 hours a week to train. Yeah, it's kind of it's pretty fun for me, and then it's great to be working with a group of people. Like ultra runners are self-selecting for kind of in a group of people whose stories are pretty interesting typically. So that's really fun. It's a really supportive and kind of unique community where I don't know. I've met probably hundreds, maybe thousands of people, and I can count the number of assholes on one hand, less than one hand. Like it's just a
Yeah.
really it's an amazing community. So being able to be a part of it from and like help people achieve their goals, and something that I'm also really passionate about is super rewarding. And then obviously it's everyone goes through unique struggles to get where they're going, and so I learn from them, just as much as they learn from me. I like to think.
Yeah, I definitely think doing hard things helps humble a guy, keeps your head on straight. I mean, I'm sure you think about everything on the run and sort through all of life's problems as well. Do you listen to anything, or you just no headphones, no earbuds, you just run?
So typically, if I'm on trail, I am no headphones, no earbuds. I like that time to be kind of meditative anyway. You know, sometimes just the feeling of a breeze going like past your ears and through your hair is just like it'll kind of wake you up in a way that sort of connects you to the rest of the world. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but
Yeah.
and then I'll let myself sometimes if it's I live in a place where I live in the desert and it doesn't rain very often, but when it does rain, my trails get really muddy and awful. And so if I have to run on the road, I'll typically let myself listen to something because it's kind of boring and I don't really want to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like a way to motivate myself to get out. And then during races, I feel like music is basically a drug. It's a legal performance enhancing drug. So if I am really struggling, and I can put on something that's going to give me a little extra pep in my step, then I'm happy to do that. And then at nighttime, when I'm running at night and I'm alone, I typically like to have music playing out loud if I'm not around other runners because it just makes me feel a little bit better about hopefully warning off some creatures that could be out there.
Yeah. What else do you do in the outdoors? You said you love the outdoors. Are you a hunter, kayaker? What do you like to do when you're not running and training?
I was a kayaker for a little bit. I was a whitewater rafting guide for a bit, and that was really fun. I had some scary experiences kayaking that made me go like, this might not be for me. But
Yeah.
I do like spending time on the river. Uh, Outside of running, I really like skiing. That's probably my second love in the outdoors. I love backcountry skiing, so hiking up, and there's something about we just talked about like no headphones and everything. There's something about how quiet the snow makes a forest or the mountains that is just pretty spectacular. And then backcountry skiing, no lift lines. In Colorado, you do have to be careful because the snowpacks can be pretty dangerous. But I, am a cautious backcountry skier. I'm not trying to die in an avalanche. But often you're skiing really good conditions. You're skiing powder snow and through some trees, and it's just pretty mellow and nice. So that is an off-season activity for the winter that I just absolutely love. And honestly, if I was a better skier, I could totally see myself focusing on that instead of running in terms of like how much I enjoy the activities. They're really similar, but alas, I am a much better runner than a skier.
Yeah. Oh well, it's fun. I like to backcountry snowmobile. I used to do a lot of that, and the sheer freedom you have going in places where you wonder if someone's ever actually been there,
Yeah,
and just stopping and like you say, being in the absolute silence. Like it's just dead quiet up there some days, and there's no wind, and there's nothing like it. You don't get that in the city. You don't really get that at home. Like in the wilderness it's different. Not a lot of people by numbers, I guess, compared to the mass population, really experience the wilderness anymore. So
yeah, and I
like,
bet even just you could even just simplify that to not a lot of people experience silence. Like I bet there's not a in terms of the percentage of the population who has like actually sat in silence like that for any amount of time is probably pretty minimal. And there's something beautiful about it for sure when it's just like you know i'm i i, be, I believe in the connectedness of the universe, and like I mentioned with the wind flowing through your hair and those moments of silence. It's like you can kind of feel very at one with what's around you. And yeah, those kind of sublime moments and can kind of creep up on you at any time. And but you only really get them if you're in the places where that sort of wavelength is accessible, and that's definitely not sidewalk city.
no, and a lot of people can't sit there in silence for 5 minutes without thinking about checking their phone constantly.
Yeah.
And people should try to do it more. Just sit there in silence and not check your phone. You're into meditation then at all, a little bit like that, and to strengthen your mental game,
Yeah,
or?
so I started meditating in college after some experiences pushed me in the direction of kind of wanting to be able to not emphasize my thought process as much as we tend to do, and so I was really into it for a while, and I would meditate for a couple hours at a time sometimes. And now I feel like I've reached a level of proficiency with that kind of mindfulness that I meditate 10 minutes a day in the morning, and I try to punctuate my day with moments where like I'll just take 5 intentional breaths, or while I'm running. I feel like that can be really meditative if you can kind of slip outside of the thought process and just listen to your feet in the dirt. And sometimes they're sliding on slick rock, and then you've got the wind and you've got all of those kind of inputs as well. But yeah, no, I think the ability to meditate, both just for mental health in the kind of crazy anxiety inducing world in which we find ourselves, but also specifically for ultra running, like the ability to separate yourself from a negative thought process is massive. Like just not having to, I think unless you've tried to meditate enough that you can kind of notice the patterns of thought, a lot of people don't even know how swept away by their own thoughts their daily existence actually is. And when you can recognize that happening, and any time in a multi-day race, you're going to have this like these negative moments where your brain is telling you that you should stop, or you should you should sleep, you should like, why are you doing this, this is stupid, you suck, like all of these things are going to kind of go through your brain. And if you are able to just sort of like step back from that conveyor belt of negativity and kind of remove yourself from having to be drawn into that, it's like it got to be a massive advantage. I can only imagine, because um, I was actually into meditation before I was into ultra running, so I feel like I kind of came into it with that skill. But I do think it's valuable.
Yeah, you found that pretty young in life, I guess, the benefits of meditation, and being able to recognize that, yeah, most of us are overthinkers. Most of us don't realize how overstimulated we probably are throughout the day, especially in a college environment and professional environments. And very few people take the time to just isolate and work on thought control. And you found the benefits to that like I said, at a young age, and no doubt about it, it's probably translated into your running. Anything else like that you've picked up throughout life that you found has been a benefit to you mentally or physically even?
I'm sure there is. And I got lucky
Any
with
men,
meditation.
any mentor? I was gonna just add to that, and also, who was your mentors as you were coming up through that
Yeah,
as well?
I got lucky with the meditation aspect because I was when I was young, I got like, I don't know, like 12, 13. I started reading the philosopher Sam Harris. I don't know if you know who that is, but and he's got plenty of. We don't have to talk about it, like areas of controversy with his beliefs, but I mean, he is a very good teacher of meditation for someone coming from a secular context. So kind of separating it from what could be described as kind of more woo woo, new age practices adjacent to, the power of crystals, those types of things. So that's not my realm at all. And so having meditation kind of taught in a scientific, secular fashion was the way that it most it kind of wormed its way into my brain as like, okay, this is actually something to pay attention to, as opposed to something to ignore, that in
Mm-hmm.
kind of the space of the unknowable. So I think meditation does have some like a good scientific basis, and that's the way it was most effective being taught to me. So I lucked out having been familiar with his work when he came out with his meditation app, Waking Up. And then in terms of the running side of things, I quickly, when I entered the sport, knew that I wanted to get into the longer distances, so even longer than hundreds. And one of the reasons was, one of the original 200 guys whose record I'm actually chasing this year for the Triple Crown Race Series, but his name's Mike McKnight, and he. One of the things that I found so admirable about him was that he is kind of just a normal guy, like isn't like a genetic freak like some of the and I mean that as a compliment to those genetic freaks.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like the Kenyans or the people running really fast marathons.
Yeah.
It's like that's not possible unless you have, you know, the genes of the person who's made you look like you do and who gave you the, you know, the V12 engine that's, you know, going in a Lamborghini. Like, I just don't have that. And so being able to look up to people who are like, okay, you can put in the hard work and you can be really mentally tough and you can be successful at these longer events. So that was really nice getting into the longer distances, just being like, okay, this becomes less and less about genetics and more about like what you mentally bring to the table. And I mean, that's why we see, you know, the longer the distance, the more likely it is that women are beating men. So it's like you can overcome almost anything genetically once everyone feels like garbage at mile 170, you know, because then you're just, you know, it's willpower. It's like who can hurt the most, and that just doesn't have anything to do with what your VO2 max is or, you know, how fast your, you know, mile time can be. So having kind of normal people as mentors getting into the sport was really nice. And then I've just been lucky enough to have a few friends that have been professional runners for a little while, like help me through some of the low points in my career. My wife's not a runner, but she's just, you know, immensely supportive, and I lucked out big time just having her being willing to come to these races and support me and crew for them. And, you know, for a long time, this thing that was taking up 30 hours a week for me wasn't making me any money. and I'm spending all my money on races and traveling to these races. So it's like, it took a lot of faith on her part, I think, to be able to stick with me and believe that this could get to a point where it became a career. So it's like ultra running in many ways, it's kind of a team sport in that, like, you just can't do it without the support crew around you. You know, it's almost kind of amazing how much it takes just to get like one person to a finish line.
Yeah, clearly you're pursuing your passion, and that's probably bringing you happiness because, like you said, you're able to make it as a career now, which is just a win-win. And I think, you know, a lot of people don't spend time pursuing their passions as a career. They're too worried about the mortgage and everything else and not stepping out of their lane, their safety net. But you're able to do that. You had a supporting partner to do that. What did you study when you were in college? Is it at all tied to this, or does it help?
No.
Is it completely irrelevant?
Completely irrelevant.
Are you a dentist?
Yeah. When I went into college, I wanted to be a politician. So I wanted to be a U.S. senator was my goal. I studied political science. I got a bachelor's degree in political science, and then I have a master's in public administration. So no, they are not.
Oof, dodged a bullet.
Not super useful for ultra running, but
yeah.
I will say, just like I love writing, I love reading, I love philosophy. Being exposed to different kinds of political philosophy in college was exciting, and, you know, I feel like made me a more well-rounded individual as a human. So I don't look back at that experience as wasted necessarily. Yeah. But I was going to school during the 2016 election at a very, very liberal school. So you can only imagine there was some, and I was in Washington, D.C., so there's like an intense level of turmoil during that time period in the United States in general, but specifically on my campus that was like less than optimal for a bright-eyed young idealist attempting to break into the political world. And so there was a lot of, you know, personal growth and evolution that happened in that time. You know, I would not say that I'm, you know, as cynical as can be about, you know, human nature in that regard, but certainly my idealism was shattered quite abruptly due to a few different factors. But yeah, I mean, I had an experience where I was kind of depressed for the only time in my life, about 3 months from getting my master's degree. And then I went on a camping trip solo in West Virginia and had a very powerful experience that made me realize, I was like, oh, like, I actually don't want to do this anymore. Like, this isn't, I've been studying something that I am passionate and interested about, but it's like, this isn't for me. Like, I can't picture myself doing this. And it was like, oh, what do I want to do, you know? And then I'm in this beautiful forest, these beautiful mountains, and I don't know if it was, it sort of feels like one of those things that was meant to happen. I don't know if I believe in that sort of thing, but it felt like it, in the sense like, oh, like this is what I want to do. Like I want to spend time in beautiful places like this. So it was a really poignant, powerful moment in my life, kind of transitioning from these material rat race oriented goals to like, okay, I want to spend time on this planet that we've been gifted, and I want to see the most beauty and experience it with my body and move through time and space in a way that feels meaningful to me, as opposed to kind of chasing these societal incentives of, air quotes, success that I had sort of bought into much more as a young person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you went camping just by yourself just to get out of the rat race for a bit. And was just that in itself, just being in nature, isolated, time to think, time to realize what's important? Is that just what kind of shifted your mentality, that all that stuff, especially in the 2016 election, really isn't important in the bigger scheme of life? Or what was it about that experience that just hit you and clicked?
There may have been some other relatively extreme stimulus that resulted
Right.
in some of those realizations.
Yes.
But
So you're soul searching.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there, but yeah. I mean, I do think I may have come to these conclusions eventually, but it was just like this
Yeah.
snap moment where I'm sitting in the woods thinking about, like, why do I feel this way, and like literally all of a sudden I was just like, oh, like I don't want to do this. And like, is that a
Yeah.
perfect time to realize that 3 months from getting your master's degree? Like, no, but it's better than
Yeah.
realizing it 5 years into a career that you hate. So
Yeah.
the pivot was really easy and freeing. I was like, oh, okay, like
Yeah.
I understand kind of what's making me feel so down right now. And then you know, I came back from that camping trip and signed up for well, it was actually my second marathon, but the first marathon that I would ever actually train well for in Virginia later that year is 2018. And, the rest is history, as they say. Like, now we're 7 years into a running career, and, I'm a full time coach. So it's like, it's, there can be moments like that in life that I think you just need to embrace when, the universe itself is slapping you in the face and being like, hey, like, here's here's some facts, like take it or
Yeah.
take it or leave it. And I think the only option is to take it if you want to be happy.
Yeah. And 3 months out, I mean, obviously, that took some courage to just shift your entire life, your entire paradigm, and you're just trying to tell everybody you're not crazy. And the proof is in the pudding that you're not. I mean, you're very successful in what you do. You made a career out of it. Where are you going from here? What are your personal goals now? Obviously, you're chasing a record right now. That's probably your immediate focus. Long term, what's in store for you? Where do you see yourself 10, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, so this year I'm chasing the Triple Crown record. It's a series of 200-mile races, all put on by Destination Trail is the organization. And so the gentleman I mentioned earlier, Mike McKnight, currently has the record. He was the last person to win all three races in a single year in 2019, also when he set the record. So I'm aiming to win all three races and set the record this year as well. So that's kind of been uh, a long-term goal for a while. I've been chasing the 200-mile distance and trying to perfect it for 4 years now. So this is kind of the first year where I've really taken big steps in that direction. So it's pretty satisfying. Long-term, with specifically the running career, I would like to get into like longer trail FKTs, so fastest known times. Next year, I want to try to set the Colorado Trail FKT, which is 490 miles through the Rockies, and the FKT is currently like 6 days and 18 hours or something like that. So going for that. And then I would really like to get into long trail FKT, so like the Pacific Crest Trail or something like that, or the Appalachian Trail, 45 days running 50 miles a day or thereabouts. So getting into those types of things. I do see myself as being a coach for the long haul. It's something I really like doing. I like working with people in this regard, and just helping them achieve these really ambitious goals that they set for themselves. I find that process really rewarding. My wife and I do want to start a family, so obviously, like, that's probably the biggest life decision you can make, is to bring new humans into the world. So that's obviously going to be a focus at some point. And then outside of running and those types of things, I'm also a writer. I've written a novel that I am slowly attempting to get published. That's a very discouraging process. So, uh,
I can just imagine.
yeah, who knows?
Fiction, nonfiction? What are you writing
Yeah,
about?
it's fiction. So it's actually it's based basically like where I live and in the American Southwest. So I kind of made a story so that I could kind of express hopefully an interesting plot, but also the ability to express like my love for the landscape and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, attempting to get that published, that would be awesome if that ever happened. Who knows? That is if if there's something that ultra running will help with, maybe it'll help with the process of like never hearing back from literary agents as you send off book queries. So
Right.
that could eventually happen. That would be amazing. But yeah, I don't necessarily have outside of those things. It's like my life. I'm so happy right now. I feel
Yeah.
so lucky that I've been able to like take this thing that I love and somehow work hard enough to make it into a career. Like it totally feels kind of unbelievable at this point. And it just like trying to enjoy those moments that come because of that is the focus. So hopefully coaching is stays sustainable, and I feel like my success with races has resulted in brands looking for partnerships and sponsorships, so I could have streams of income coming just from running itself, which would be amazing. Maybe at some point my job title might be professional ultra runner and coach, which like just living someplace where that's possible. I think all the time I'm like, man, I could have been born anywhere else in the world, and I live in a country where like this is actually possible. That's totally lucky. So um I don't know.
Well, you were born somewhere else and you came here and now you're making a go of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's it's pretty cool. I this is a long-winded answer to your question, but just like
Oh,
the level of gratitude I feel for being able to do something that I love is just insane. Like I wake up every day and I think like, okay, like I'm really busy today, but I'm doing all things that I want to do. Which like how many people can say that? It's a very privileged place to be.
very few people can say that. So, what do you think about the enhanced Olympic Games that are coming up? Do you think if you went hard on the peds that you could just smash times, or do you think, yeah, you can try it in ultra running, but that's not what gets you to the end? Like,
Nah,
I'm gonna watch some. I think it's gonna be amazing to see. But
yeah, I mean, I bet it. No, I bet it would work. And I honestly, ultra running as a sport probably has a reckoning coming at once there's enough money in the sport. I think that there's probably going to be a level of doping that we're not aware of currently because there's just not a lot of drug testing. I don't. I will pay attention to the enhanced games for sure. Like I'll be interested to see what happens. Um, will it garner the level of passion from me that the Olympics does? Like definitely not. But
no,
it's interesting for sure. And I mean, there's some purists who would be like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe people want to see this. But it's like, dude, let's go for it. Like whatever. I'm not that worried about it. I think like there's an argument from a medical standpoint that like stuff like the Tour de France, is actually safer for the athletes if they're doping. So
hmm
it's who knows. I bet that it makes a big difference. I mean, have you seen the documentary Icarus?
yeah,
Yeah, like when he does the PEDs and actually doesn't improve that much. So who knows? But I mean, you look back at the old Tour de France, and you have to go like the tours that Lance won, and then you have to go all the way down to like 35th place for the person who never failed a drug test. Like I think that unfortunately there's probably a level in every sport that would astound us because I think the testing is just not as good as we think it is.
well, and tricking the test is getting better every day too.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you use for supplementation? Do you have some go-tos that you just know work, and do you have some stuff you've tried that you find is just absolute snake oil?
Um, Definitely, I do have some things that I absolutely think work. I mean, I take vitamin D and fish oil every day just for the like bone health, immune support for vitamin D, and then the brain stuff for the fish oil. So take those two every day. I take a supplement called Tungat Ali for it's like male hormone support. It was first studied by the NBA when they noticed that NBA players' testosterone levels would be super low at the end of a season, and so they were trying to get around to like using TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, to treat that. And Tungat Ali has some good evidence there. So I use that. I do feel like I notice a difference. And then I actually just recently started partnering with a company called Currens, which basically is a black currant concentrate extraction. I don't know exactly what the correct terms are here, but there's a lot. I heard about it first on this other endurance athlete, Zach Bitter's podcast, and he's really good at parsing through studies. And so when he talks about something like having evidence for it working, I take it seriously. And so there's like 40 independent studies not funded by the company that show a significant benefit in reduced fatigue and increased recovery using Currens. And so I have started using that for my longer runs, and I do feel like I've actually noticed a legitimate difference with it. There's a lot of things I've used in the past, like CBD lotion, for instance. Like, I have no clue if that stuff does anything. Like, or oral CBD. I'm like, I no idea. So I tend to think that probably not, but I do notice a difference when I do or do not take Currents. So that's like why I'm willing to say that. I am partnered with them, so full disclosure. I'm obviously like biased by that, but I wasn't when I started using them. So take that as you will. And then I drink a protein shake every day, but I would get enough protein from my diet anyway, but I like a protein shake. It's like the only thing sweet that I get to have every day.
Right.
But other than that,
Creatine, glutamine, anything like that, have you dabbled with?
what was that? Sorry.
Creatine,
Oh yeah,
glutamine, BCAAs.
Yep, creatine definitely every day. Creatine I think has the most evidence out of any supplement behind it, in terms of like helping to build muscle, and then some evidence for some brain health stuff. So yes, creatine in my protein shake. I'm trying to think of anything else. I don't think there's anything else. So it's not the most like, it's not as the Andrew Huberman level of supplement routine, but it's also, these supplements are expensive, hard to know which ones to buy. So I tend to like buy the ones that I know works, and I buy them from reputable places that are third party tested, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so you're not taking blood and getting your blood sampled and let's optimize my body and push it as hard as we can. Hey?
No, I have not gone the Brian Johnson route of of longevity, or attempting to increase longevity.
Yeah, well, he's probably gonna outlive me, but I mean, it'd be some irony involved if he didn't. But maybe my 5Ks will get me further than I think.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I mean, I think you've probably reached a point where the mental health aspect is not being optimized for if you find yourself doing blood transfusions with your kids. So,
yeah, no kidding. So, you're married. You're gonna probably have a family. But you're still gonna have to find the time to get after this. And what's that conversation like with your wife when you're planning your life ahead? And I mean, hopefully you're at the point where she can raise your kids and you can focus on running as a full-time career. What's that future plan look like for you that way with starting a family?
Yeah.
For us that like to say we don't have enough time to get out and exercise.
Yeah, I mean, it's the benefit is we both work from home, so that allows us some significant flexibility. I can set my own schedule, so it'll be paying for very minimal childcare, if any at all, hopefully, which would be great. And then obviously there's compromises that'll have to be made, especially while the kids are like really young. But I firmly believe that you can fold your kids into your life. Like my brother is also an ultra runner, and his son, so my nephew, would bike along while he was doing runs. And so, when he was old enough to do that, and he'd be doing, sometimes 10, 20 miles a day on a bike when he's like 5, 6, 7 years old, And so you just like, you have active kids, you fold them into your life like that. I think there's lots of examples of successful ultra runners who end up, maybe the training isn't perfectly optimized, but now you also have this like huge extra piece of motivation. It's like you want to do this so that your kids are proud of you. You want to do this so that you can say to them like, look at what I've done here. Look at the work I put in. So I think there's an added mental layer that might come with being a dad that is beneficial. I've heard people talk about that. Who knows? Obviously you don't know until you have that experience. But I think it's just like, you know, in any relationship, it's being willing to make sacrifices
Mm-hmm.
um, for the relationship and for the health of the other person, and to kind of help that along. And my wife and I are very much both in the same boat of willing to do that. You know, she's come and crewed for me and supported me during these ultra marathons, and I'll be doing the same thing for her
Yeah.
when the baby's young, and that sort of thing. So it'll be, I think, a really rewarding experience from, you know, an intellectual life perspective, and then also I think it'll just be one of those, you know, life adjustments that eventually becomes a routine again.
You'll be able to train exhausted. So that put that into your training plan.
Exactly.
I'm going with no sleep and I'm going to go crank out 20 miles today and this is going to be great for my record, a goal I'm trying to chase. So do you, obviously, I mean, you're doing more interviews, you're probably getting a little more attention now with the Bigfoot 200 and the wins you're picking up. Your days are probably getting full. You're a coach, you're doing your own training. Do you miss days? Do you let yourself miss a training day? Are you hard on yourself that way? Or if you're home at 11 o'clock and tired, do you tell yourself, no, I'm still going to get training in today, no matter what? And are you 7 days a week?
Um, During my peak weeks, I am 7 days a week typically. I will say that I've learned, you know, we talked about overtraining a little bit earlier in our conversation, and I've learned through experience that uh, I'm the type of person who needs to be pulled back more often than I need to be pushed forward, you know, and I'm doing all of that myself. But like, if I don't get a good night of sleep, or I have multiple nights of bad sleep, or, you know, I'm sick or something, I'm not going to push through that and train necessarily. I think that it's better to show up on race day a little bit undertrained than at all overtrained. And I totally try to optimize more for showing up on race day as healthy as possible than I do, you know, trying to eke out every last little bit of training that I can. And I really work on that with my athletes as well. So, I mean, as a coach, I'm often telling people to do a little bit less rather than telling them to do a little bit more. Is You know, very much that is the far more frequent conversation with ultra runners, is like, hey, take a day off, you know, more so than like, hey, you need to be getting your workouts in. And I'm that same way. So it's been a learning process. I used to be the type of person who would be like, no, I need to get the training done no matter what. You know, I'll sacrifice sleep, whatever. But now I have a no compromise policy with sleep, essentially. You know, I need to average between like 8 or 9 a week, hours a week. I'm sorry, 8 or 9 hours a night over the course of a week. So if I get 6 hours one night, then I'm going to be making that up the rest in the rest of the week. And so I don't really compromise on that, honestly. But that's been a learning process. You know, I think a lot of us get into this sport with that kind of uh, what I would say is the suboptimal but understandable David Goggins kind of mindset, where it's like, we're going to push through everything. You know, all the pain doesn't matter, yada yada. But ultimately, it's like learning to listen to your body and kind of knowing when to strategically pump the brakes. That's actually what is going to make your career much longer and make you more successful in the long run.
Hmm. And then when you've taken some time to recover or time to rest from injuries, how quickly do you notice that it falls off when you get back to training?
Endurance goes away pretty fast. So cardio fitness drops off relatively quickly, but it comes back pretty fast. Strength goes away slowly and then comes back slowly. Uh, I haven't had many like long breaks. I did tear my hamstring in 2022, and so I couldn't do anything for 12 weeks basically. And so once I got back to things, I definitely noticed. You know, I was like, ugh, I am starting from a level of fitness that is not familiar to me. And I mean, I am disciplined enough that, you know, during that time when I couldn't do much, I was doing ab workouts every day. You know, what I could do, I was still doing. So I, you know, maintained some level of you know, activity despite being, you know, essentially locked in my apartment for that amount of time. It was terrible. But it goes away relatively fast and comes back pretty fast. I don't have like actual timelines necessarily.
Yeah.
But you know, I can't even remember other than that torn hamstring, like the last time that I took, you know, 2 weeks off or something like that.
Yeah.
I went to Greece last November and I was like pretty unstructured, but I was still running almost every day.
Yeah.
And I mean, the running for me in the off season is just like a de-stress and fun, you know. So my November and December this year, I typically add in some speed work and I focus more on strength and stuff. But I'll be running 40 to 50 miles a week, and the running is just I mean, heroin addicts say that heroin eventually just makes them feel normal, and that's kind of what running does for me. I describe it as
Yeah.
an addiction only slightly in jest, where it's like it's just like that's to reach my baseline for the day, and then I can continue to
Yeah.
do other things.
So did you have surgery for the hamstring tear, or like how severe was that?
No, luckily, yeah, it was a muscular tear that didn't require surgery, so it did fix itself, but it was awful. Like the most pain I've ever been in my life. I tore it, and then I ran 27 more miles in this race, and
Ooh.
that was a bad plan.
Yeah,
So
I actually had a. Go
it
ahead.
was just like excruciatingly painful. Yeah, happily no surgery, but I mean, I was on crutches for a long time. It took a long time of just like really simple exercises to try to get it to where I could even straighten my leg. So it was a slow road back from that one. That's the most serious injury I've had.
Anything different on the recovery? Were you doing the hyperbaric chamber, or anything out of the ordinary that you found through recovery to help with injuries?
No, I've never done the hyperbaric chamber. I own a sauna now, but I've been pretty invested in sauna time. Week. I used to have a gym membership, and then that's all I was using it for was the sauna. Which digression, public saunas. That's where my faith in humanity is reaches rock bottom. But now,
I've heard stories.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I think the sauna is probably my favorite. I think it's gotten more popular, but you could say like non-traditional recovery tool. Just that heat, increased blood flow, kind of the maybe a little bit of that like detoxification, sort of like sweating it out kind of idea. I do think that really there's something to that.
I agree. My sister has a sauna in her house, and when I'm there, that's before bed every night. I'm getting my 20 minutes in there, sweating hard, and then straight to the cold shower. And man, what a sleep! Do you do cold plunge too as well?
I would, but I don't have a cold plunge, and I think the
Yeah.
sauna's the bigger benefit. I think it's got the biggest body of evidence behind it, but I'm not skeptical about the cold plunge necessarily. It's just I don't have
Yeah.
space for it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's how we are. I keep telling the wife I want to renovate the basement into the sauna basement. But our kids got to have somewhere to play. So
Yeah.
I'm not winning that fight, but I think it would be great. So you're going to continue. You got your book. Do you continue to write, or what's your aspirations with the writing side of things?
Yeah, so I do have ideas for, the novel is technically supposed to be the first in a trilogy. I haven't started the second one, but I have a process of writing where like I wrote the first one in 22 days, and it's like I don't know 90,000 words or something. So it's not super long, but it's not super short. But that's kind of how my brain works. Is I just like get these ideas, and then all of a sudden it's like has to happen right then and right now. So I think eventually that'll happen again. Who knows? But for writing in general, I do write a lot. I have a Substack that I started this year, and I keep track, or I write blog posts. I try to kind of write one a week, at least every 2 weeks, and I've been doing that pretty successfully. That's mostly running focus, but yeah, I do try to flex the muscle of writing pretty frequently. I'm an avid journaler, so I keep notes and stuff and write down ideas. But yeah, I it's an important part of my life. It's the way that I feel like I express myself best, and the specifically with these big races, the experience itself is so intense and so much that it's like you can't process it correctly, or I can't process it correctly unless I write about it. It's like the way that my brain comes to terms with the experience, if that makes sense. And so I
Hmm.
like have race reports for the races that I've done, um, and it just helps kind of okay, like here's what went well, here's how it went, like here's the narrative of like what you remember, because it's just hard in that like in the moment, and especially in the days following when you're just exhausted and you like can't even think and move around. It's hard to really get through what it meant to you.
Hmm. So what was the big one you had coming up? You said one more ultra before the year's out.
Yeah. So
And so what is it, and what does your life look like up until that run?
sure, it's called the Moab 240. So it's the last race in the Triple Crown series for the 200. And basically the three races are all 7 weeks apart. So it's October 10th, and I've been focused on recovery the past 2 weeks. Bigfoot was 2 weeks from this past Sunday, so I'm like 16 days out from finishing that race. And so, letting myself recover and just attempting to arrive healthy on race day. So when you're doing a race series like this, I think you just have to accept that, I'm not going to be able to show up to Moab, which is the last race, quite as optimized as I showed up to Tahoe, which is the first race. I think that's just a fact that you have to accept and deal with. And so I'm going to try to be, safety minded first. So, if I feel anything untoward in the body, I'm going to take care of that first and foremost. But I feel great right now, and I'm confident that I'm going to get 3 or 4 weeks of really solid training in the month of September. So I live close to Moab. I'm only an hour and a half away. I'm going to go run on the course a lot. It's a very different course to the other 2 races I've done this year. Those are both mountainous, involved a lot of hiking. This one is relatively flat and is going to involve a lot more actual running. So I'm going to go train on flat, hot Jeep roads, try to simulate race conditions as best as possible. I want to get the clean sweep for these 3 races. I want to set the overall record, which is the combined time from all 3 races. And that's going to require, a lot of dedication and focus in September, and ideally making some getting stronger with my running, because my greatest strength as an ultra runner is my climbing, my ability in the mountains, and I would say my weakness typically is the flat running, and so I'm trying to kind of address that as we get closer to that race. But yeah, super focused. I'm working with some videographers on a little Triple Crown focused documentary for the year, so it'll be primarily focused on Moab as the last race, but starting to shoot that on this upcoming Thursday. So that's exciting. And then, yeah, really, all I can think about is Moab right now. But it's like even more so than the other 2 races. It's just become the complete obsession. I feel so motivated. It's like the overall record has been a dream for a long time. Now that the clean sweep is in reach, man, that would be pretty cool. So it's like the fire of motivation is strong. It's just about intelligently adding in training around the other factors of staying healthy and arriving on race day as refreshed and well trained as you can be. It's kind of a balance between those 2.
So you're not cranking out crazy distance while you're training just to help avoid injury, or are you doing some long runs part of your training?
I'll definitely do some long runs. It'll depend how ambitious I go, like how I feel week to week. Like my longest run this week will probably be something like 15 or 16 miles, but hopefully I'll get some 6 to 7 hour days out in the desert in September. So maybe 30 to 40 miles, depending on kind of what the terrain looks like out there. So I'm hoping for some longer days for sure, but that'll partly depend just again on like how the weeks progress in terms of how my body feels in the first few weeks of September.
So you're going to get, what's the weather like then? It's October. Do you start to get the cool nights and still piping hot days, or what are you going to be dealing with for conditions?
It can be so different. So I've paced in this race. I've supported friends. And 3-4 years ago, one year I paced for my friend. She ended up winning the women's race, and the high during the whole race was 92. So it's hot. And it's all exposed. There's no shade anywhere. So hot, sweaty, salt, like it's desert, so it's dry. And then my friend the next year did it, and a different friend, and the high was 72. So it can be really different year to year. You run a lot in the desert, but you do go up to 10,000 feet into the mountains that are right there too. So the year that the high was 72, the low in the mountains was like 12. So you end up dealing with a huge variety of conditions. You could potentially deal with snow in the mountains. So it's a who knows what the weather's going to look like. Kind of fall and the shoulder seasons around here are a little bit unpredictable. But typically, I would say it's the average is somewhere between there. Highs in the low 80s during the day, and then probably lows in the low 40s is kind of what you'd be looking at. But the desert has the big swings of temperature, and the sun makes a huge difference. So when there's no shade, it can sap a lot of life from you.
Yeah, it sounds like you might be a little bit more experienced with where you live. You get probably a wide variety of climate conditions there. So
yeah,
another feather in your cap. I guess who would be the other big runners that you're going to see there? And if you don't get it, how do you deal with loss? And how do you move on and move forward? This is a lifetime achievement, the Triple Crown. I'm sure it's not all in the same year.
No, it is all in the same year. So yeah,
Wow, so it's a lot of work.
yeah. But so there's the guy who came second at Bigfoot is who I would be thinking of as my main competition. His name's Brody. He's 18, first of all, which is kind of insane, doing these things. So he is not even at the peak for endurance athletes. So he is going to be an incredible runner. Already is really good. So he's huge competition. Another friend of mine, Michael Greer, he's out of Arizona. He'll be running the race, and on his best day, he's going to be someone to reckon with as well. So I can't take anything for granted there. And then, dealing with failure and loss. Last year, I had two very high-profile DNFs, high profile in my mind, but that were really difficult to deal with mentally. And I think the biggest lesson that I took forward from that is just that failure is actually not the opposite of success. It's not like black and white or up and down or left or right. Failure is actually just a part of success. I think that you can't think of anybody in history who's I actually have one example who I'll say afterwards, but there's almost no one who is successful who never failed. Like Michael Jordan, Michael Phelps, good ultra runners like Courtney Dauwalter, like all these people all have high profile failures that have led them to where they are today. I was actually thinking about this and attempting to come up with someone, and the only person I could come up with who never failed was Alexander the Great. But he was given like the ultimate silver spoon and then died when he was 32. So it's like not a person we're necessarily trying to emulate.
No, exactly.
But it's like failure not being an opposite of success and rather kind of being a stepping stone. I think that's really the mindset to have in these situations, and just accepting the fact that like for these 200-mile races, I think that in my control is 30 or 40% of the variables. I think the majority of things are outside of my control, and just going into the unknown and accepting the unknown, that's the only way to approach it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't approach new things or hard things because they let the fear of failure just block them right away, stepping out of their comfort zone. That's your life. I mean, yeah, you're comfortable running, but you do it to the point of getting very uncomfortable. 240 is a long race. Yeah. And you want to get into some even longer stuff. You said like running the old trails. Do you anticipate yourself doing that anytime soon, or what does that look like for stage of your life when you want to try to get the very long running done?
It'll depend partly on, I think for that, for something that's going to take like 45 days, I want to have a good set of sponsors because I'll need to somehow fund that.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will happen at some point here relatively soon. And then I am going to attempt the Colorado Trail next year. So that's, 7 days as opposed to, 2 or 3 like these 200s. So making a step up in distance. But who knows? I mean, the nice thing, like I said earlier, is I think that for these really long efforts, you've actually got a really long peak. Like I feel like I'll be able to, assuming things go well and I take care of myself, I'll be able to compete at the highest level until maybe I'm 55. So, I've got a quarter of a century, hopefully, of possible great performances left in me. So I'm not in a rush to get there, but those big goals like the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, those types of things, those do take up some amount of space in my mind as just like, these kind of huge dreams, So I would like to attempt one of those probably in the next 3 or 4 years here. And I think, that type of thing, it's like, that's all I'm doing that year. It's like 45 days out of the year spent running 50 miles a day. It's like, there's probably not a lot of space for something else. So,
No.
Whenever I can make that happen, at the earliest opportunity will probably be the answer to that. But when exactly that will be, hard to know.
Yeah. So you lean on caffeine a bit. I've seen in one of your posts that when you're running, yeah, you like the caffeine. What is your thoughts on caffeine? Are you a coffee drinker in your normal day? Do you find there's crash? You're obviously not sleeping on these races, so you're just wiring that brain and just pushing through.
Yeah. So for the 200s this year, I've slept 5 minutes in each of them. So just very quick, kind of, the computer's not working, so let's turn it on and off type situation. But yeah, I drink coffee every day. I just love coffee too, and it's a part of my morning routine. You know, I sit and I drink 2 mugs of coffee while reading a book for the first hour of my day, which I think is uh, really, really like a pleasant way to start a morning. Um, and then, yeah, for my races, this is the first year that I've really been doing this. But basically, during the day, I have 100 milligrams of caffeine every 3 hours, and then during the night, 100 milligrams every other hour. And then, kind of like the last 12 hours of a race, I'm just like, screw it. I just need to stay awake for this last 12 hours. Like, let's go all out. I don't care. I'll drink energy drinks. I'll gel. And getting most of my caffeine from caffeinated gels. So maybe I'll be doing 100 milligrams an hour, you know? But
Yeah.
caffeine is another one of those things that's like a legal performance enhancing drug. So, I mean, it helps with the alertness. There's no reason, I think, the first night of a race to feel tired at all. So, why not just stay alert? And then it increases your oxygen uptake. It does a lot of good things for you. I'm sure that I should offer some level of qualification where, like, if I had like a arrhythmia or a heart problem, would I
Yeah.
be doing the same thing? Like, probably not. But and I mean, I think my estimate for the Tahoe 200 was I had 3,100 milligrams of caffeine throughout the race. So, 31 cups of coffee theoretically.
Wow.
And like, would I recommend doing that every weekend? No. But do I really think that it's like a huge problem to do 3 times a year? I think probably not. And then I said this in a, a previous interview, and only kind of joking, but I was like, because someone brought up that, well, don't you think this might be that could be like a little bit unhealthy? And I was like, well, if you were running just for your health, like, you probably should have stopped at a half marathon. Like, if this is
Yeah.
pretending that staying awake for 2 or 3 days straight and running 200 miles is like optimal for physical health, that's probably not the case, So these
No.
are all tools in the toolkit of attempting to push the limits, and I'm just willing to embrace those.
So you get done. What's your reward? And is it just a win, or are you going out for a big juicy steak? And what's that first sleep like? What's that first couple days of recovery like for you?
So that's actually the worst part about these events is that the week after is like so unfun. It sucks so much. Like, the first night I sleep really well because your brain just needs to shut off. There's like enough tiredness that you just sleep really well. But then for the next week I sleep terribly because my body is
Mm-hmm.
so uncomfortable. Like, you're swollen everywhere. My feet swell up. Like, everything hurts. And so, every time you toss and turn, you wake yourself up, it's like you've been like kind of hit with a hammer all over your body, and you're almost like bruised. Just everything hurts. So the week after blows. The it sort of depends on the food afterwards. I did actually, after Bigfoot, have a ribeye that my brother got and grilled for us. It was great. And I had an appetite, but I've had races where, like, I have no appetite. It's like I know I need to eat, but I, like, can't really force myself to stomach anything because I've just been shoving food in my face for 48 hours. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all a little bit of a crapshoot. I will say, like, the typically 24 hours after finishing, I'm back to wanting to eat and stuff. But and I focus almost solely on protein. It's like, let's rebuild muscles. That is the goal. And I avoid inflammatory foods, so not trying to increase inflammation because it's already sky high. And then just sleeping like as much as I want to. Typically the week after, sleeping, attempting to sleep like 9 or 10 hours a night, tossing and turning and being a little uncomfortable, but then I'll take 3 hour naps during the day. It takes a long
Yeah.
time to recover from the sleep debt that you put yourself in for sleeping only 5 minutes in 2 days while running 200 miles. Like, it is kind of crazy how long it takes for your brain to just regulate again after that.
What's the day of look like? Are you eating, or do you find benefits from fasting? Do you find you're more optimal with a little bit of a fast, and do you fast in your day to day life?
Um, I I kind of do the intermittent fasting thing. I don't really do it on purpose, but I just notice, like, my routine day to day is typically that I like eat my last meal of the day around 2 or 3 p.m. So really early, like an 85-year-old in a nursing home or something.
Yeah.
But I don't know why that is. This just kind of happens to be when I want to eat, and then I don't really feel hungry the rest of the time, the rest of the day, and then I typically eat breakfast between 7 and 8. So I technically am doing intermittent fasting, but it's not. because I want to intermittent fast. It just happens to be
Yeah.
my routine. But no, I mean, for big runs, races, I'll eat a huge breakfast. So like typically my breakfast before a long run or before a race is half cup of rice with a pound of ground beef and some cheese and a little bit of butter mixed in, and just like get some fat, get some carbs, get everything filled up to the brim, and then get moving.
Well, that's awesome. Anything else you'd like to add that you'd like to share about your life or your journey through running that would resonate with people or would be maybe surprise people? Or
I don't know. I mean, I feel like you've asked good questions. We've had a wide ranging conversation. What I will say is I feel like sometimes people get in the comparison game. So I have some friends that I've worked with in the past who've been like, oh, I'm training for a 5K. Well, it's nothing like what you do, and it's like that qualification. I feel like doesn't need to happen. It's like the one time I said this, and my wife said it can come across as condescending, but I'll explain what I mean by it. And I was just like, well, everybody has their Everest. It's like, and what I mean by that is, if you're improving, I'm all for it. Like there's nothing I find more inspiring than someone trying to lose weight or gain fitness or train for their first 10 miles or whatever. It's like I don't. I think that people can, like, the comparison is the thief of joy cliche is true unless it's to yourself. Like if you are getting better week to week, you're proud of what you're doing, you're improving, like that's all that matters. Don't get caught comparing yourself to someone. Don't compare yourself to me in terms of mileage. Like I'm a crazy person. You don't there's no reason to do that. And so it's like, yeah, I think that focusing on yourself is the way to be successful in life. Like whatever you're doing, if you're writing, you're running, you're lifting weights, it's like focus on yourself last week, 2 months ago, a year ago, rather than trying to compare yourself to anybody else. I think that even like I've gotten caught in the comparison mindset before. There's always someone out there doing something crazier, better, faster than what I'm doing, and it's just not worth it. It's like try to be the best version of yourself, and that's all you can control in life is what you're doing.
that's awesome. That's a great way to close. I greatly appreciate you coming on and the rescheduling we had to do. Best of luck. I'll be watching to see how you do, and I'm looking out for that documentary that you're going to be working on. That's going to be fantastic, I think, when you get that done. So again, appreciate you coming on. Best of luck, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Logan. It was great to be on. Good to chat with you for sure.
You bet. Take care.
You too.